So I would then like to say welcome. It's so good to see you here. I'm also saying welcome to those of you following online. Now I can't see where the camera is, but yeah, you're all welcome as well. And also those of you who will follow afterwards, because this event will be recorded and we will of course also share it so that more people can learn from all the wise words which will be said here today. I would say welcome on behalf of Dan Church Aid and IPI, International Peace Institute, and Oxford Climate Policy. Together, we are co-hosting this event, and we are doing it with a great excitement. We're looking forward to see what all the speakers will say. And the reason is that there's a momentum building here. It's really great to see how more and more parties, but also non-state actors are becoming interested in innovative finance solutions, and how they also look more into this solidarity levies. We can see this, for example, through the engagement of the task force, the Global Solidarity Levy Task Force. And we are, of course, very happy that more and more parties are joining this task force. And we have several of these parties here today as well. When we, as Dan Church Aid, IPI, and Oxford Climate Policy are focusing on climate solidarity levies, or the Climate Solidarity Alliance, as we call it, it's in a way to support the task force in their work. And we are, of course, very happy that this initiative on global level, initiated by France and Kenya and Barbados, that it's getting momentum. But while we wait for the global solutions and while we wait for all the money to start flowing, we think it's also important to encourage and call on parties to take action, to show leadership by creating national levies, maybe subnational levies as well, different ways to mobilize funding, and especially for loss and damage. As we have heard many times during this conference, but also previous COPs, we know that the need for loss and damage finances is huge. And this is why it's also so good if we can get these kind of innovative solutions to find this money. During this session, as I said, we will hear from different parties who all have different experiences. Some of them already have levies, and I think we even can get some announcement or at least some news, which is in itself very exciting. But we will also hear about the ideas we have developed as an alliance for global solidarity levies. And therefore, we will begin with a presentation by Benito Müller from the Oxford Climate Policy. We have a recording with him, and he will tell us about the ideas we have when it comes to this kind of more national and subnational approach. So if we can get Benito Müller, who is on a film on the screen. It's not a full film, it's a film clip, so don't worry. And Benito would have loved to be here and deliver it in person, but now we will hear him speak here instead.
Let me begin with a brief history of solidarity levies from my own personal experience. It all started in 2005 when President Chirac of France and President Lula of Brazil proposed an air ticket levy to fund the fight against HIV/AIDS. In 2006, France started to collect this solidarity tax on airplane tickets, and it was put into a dedicated trust fund, the Solidarity Fund for Development. In 2023, this tax raised around 370 million euros. In 2006, we published a piece, which we based on this solidarity levy, for an international air travel adaptation levy. In 2008, that was actually proposed by the LDC group in Poznan, but it didn't get anywhere. In 2020, I started an idea about doing it bottom up with corporates. That didn't go very far. But in 2023, my dear friend Salim suggested we should resuscitate the idea in terms of a levy for loss and damage. Fiji, in 2019, established a climate relocation fund, which was to support planned relocation activities. And one of the sources was the Fijian Environment and Climate Adaptation Levy. This levy is interesting because it shows what different activities can actually be levied. It's not just air tickets. You can do hotels, tourist vessels, licensed bars, or even cinemas. So this is a very interesting way in which one can raise funds for loss and damage domestically. Now, the concepts which we want to propose here and showcase are, first of all, the idea of the climate solidarity levy, which are in essence national trust funds, which are replenished by domestic levels for loss and damage. In the context of Fiji, it is in part this environmental climate and adaptation levy, and in France, it's a solidarity tax on airplane tickets, which we have in mind. The alliance idea came about in the context of the new loss and damage fund. And the idea is as follows. Member countries like France would have multilateral obligations to put money into that loss and damage fund. Countries like Fiji, who do not have such obligations, could voluntarily put money in, and if they do so, the developed country members of the alliance would have an obligation to pay them back, and pay them back a multiple, twice as much as the countries put in, to put a loss and damage solidarity benefit for contributions. How should we go forward? We need to walk the talk. This is based on a blog which we published not too long ago. And basically the road to the Climate Solidarity Alliance, as we see it now, started in Dubai with the setting up of the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force, and we envisage it could be concluded in Belém with the launch of the Solidarity Alliance. After all, President Lula, that is his child. What we do also envisage is that we need some readiness program which supports SIDS and LDCs in setting up such national trust funds and domestic climate solidarity levies. Last but not least, we have been talking about subnational activities, particularly in the United States. We published a piece together with the International Peace Institute about port authorities in the US, in particular New York, New Jersey, and Los Angeles, levying such aviation and cargo taxes. And this has is particularly pertinent at the moment for reasons which we all know. These articles were actually written in 2016 and 2017, where we saw that in the US in particular, subnational action is paramount. And we then even said that it has to include subnational action. State and city climate leadership includes global climate finance. And we think that given that we in Los Angeles and Manhattan, we have these results, we think that might be something to go forward in terms of subnational actions.
Thank you, Benito. I know he's watching, so I hope he also could hear our clap. Now I would like to ask Dan Lund from Fiji to come up and share the experiences from Fiji, because you already have some work you can talk about. Please.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thank you, Benito, for providing the initial concept that we'll be discussing today. So I've been asked to provide a bit of a case study on Fiji and the sort of national system and fund that we have in place, which is relevant to a potential system that could receive funds from levies and already has. So firstly, Fiji had no choice but to develop a national response to relocation. 5 different relocations of communities had to occur before there was any system in place. For example, 160 villagers were relocated 2 kilometers inland to avoid constant exposure to storm surges and inundation. And this was completed in 2014 with a lot of lessons learned, a very difficult and complex process. Another village, Tukutaraki village, was facing extreme rainfall events in its highland location, and then a landslide buried 50% of the village. 12 months later, the village was then hit by a Cat 4 cyclone, and community members were displaced and living temporarily in shelters. And while they were in shelters, we were hit by Cat 5 Cyclone Winston in 2016, which at the time was the strongest storm to occur in the southern hemisphere or anywhere in our Earth since records began. Since there's been many more, unfortunately. And at that time, the community had to shelter in caves to make it through the storm. So a new site for that village was then identified in 2017, and the community has been relocated. So these are the examples of the kind of experience that basically occurred irrespective of there being a policy framework in place. And it showed sort of the complexity of these issues and the fact that these issues would continue. So work to set up a national system to better formalize how we would deal with something that we knew and know will continue began in 2017. And national guidelines for planned relocation were drawn up, and as well as an act that established a trust fund, noting the costs involved and that we would need to start compiling finance and resources to be able to deal with this in future. In 2021, we passed a Climate Change Act, which then provided guidance on planned relocation. It gave guidance to the use of the trust fund. It established an interministerial task force for guiding relocation, and then required the development of standard operating procedures so that in any case of relocation needs, there would be a standardized assessment process and a series of steps to help safeguard the interest of communities, ensure that it was a community-driven process, and also ensure that there was a timely response provided. This is a very difficult and tricky issue for any government, and so there's been a huge amount of work done to develop this system over time. We've also developed dedicated financial management guidelines to ensure that the way funds are used are set within very specific parameters. We then drew up within that period of time. Fiji established the Environment and Climate Change Levy that Benito had just mentioned, and this was essentially a tax on goods and services, and a proportion of that was at the time used as a contribution to the trust fund to provide some consistency in the finance that was available. This in totality is now essentially a national system for a specific issue and part of our long-term loss and damage response, though for a very particular issue. Levies certainly offer a way to leverage finance. ECAL was affected by COVID and is currently being reviewed, but this levy demonstrated that through selected small levies on super yacht berthing fees, luxury items, alcoholic drinks, a fairly significant new stream of finance could be created, and about 140 million US was raised over a 3-year period. This is, of course, a small economy, and by no means is taxing ourselves the answer. I hope that's not the message, but it is proof of concept that can be applied in the larger context. And of course, levies need to be strategically placed and considered. For instance, raising the price of a cup of coffee from $4 to $10, which none of us will know anything about, is of course problematic. But small levies can distribute burden and raise major financing, and this is an important lesson for the fund for responding to loss and damage. Similarly, having a national system in place to manage and disperse funds for a clear objective means that we can receive funds from a range of sources at the national level to support long-term response to unavoidable climate impacts. As it is part of our national system, we are also able to leverage existing national services, work in partnership with NGOs, and leverage benefits from national infrastructure. This is a fairly complex national system, so I think it's important to recognize the sensitivity of this particular issue and not suggest that every national system would need to be this complex. Because every system or every response to every specific loss and damage issue at a national level will be context relevant and construed, and it will of course be very diverse in what actually you're looking at when it comes to the arrangements. From a fiduciary standards perspective, the robust guidelines that we have in place and legislation behind the fund mean that you cannot withdraw funds from the trust fund for love or money if it's not for a relocation specific activity. The funds held in trust are also tax exempt. So this is purely an example, but one that remains important for considering how the bottom-up country ownership approach detailed in the governing instrument of the FRLD could be realized, and as well as how innovative sources of finance could play a real direct role in realizing the vision of the fund. So I think the main message being that there are ways to really target funding at a national level. There are various sources that can actually be brought together if there is an established national fund and disbursement channel, and that removes that need to have these temporary projects that set up camp and disappear. So especially for long-term approaches, there is real incentive and need to set up these systems. And I think the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage would be well placed through its country ownership approach to be able to use this type of approach to ensure that it's incentivizing national systems, especially in contexts where there's a long-term need that needs to be addressed. So I'll leave it there. There are some QR codes there in case you want to be able to access some of these documents. But hopefully that case study helps provide at least an example that can feed into this conversation on levies and their potential. Thank you.
Hello. How are you?
Thank you very much, Dan Lund. And it's really encouraging to see how initiatives are taking place in countries like Fiji. We will now have a panel coming up here, and I would like to invite a number of distinguished speakers. So Jean-Christophe Donnelier from France, please. Jens Fool from Denmark. Yusuf Hussain. I thought Yusuf was, yeah, there you are. From Kenya, and Diane Black has not been... Oh, she's late. She's coming. So we will start. Yeah, we will start. And welcome to this panel. And I would like to start by asking you, Jean-Christophe, about, I mean, Franz, you were part of forming the task force and taking leadership in that way. And you also have, as Benito said, some experience from levies. So what is your take on this? What are the opportunities? And also, if you could comment on the ideas we have as presented by Benito.
Okay, yes, thank you. Yeah, well, from the perspective of one country, we're not the only one to have opted for designing a specific tax to dedicate to global solidarity. I do think that we have never been so closed to manage to get something at the international level. It's been difficult, but since last year spring event in Paris, as Benito said, there has been a momentum created with this task force with Kenya and Barbados. The impetus grew on, and some other countries joined this task force. Lastly, 3 more countries joined from the developing countryside. And I do hear a lot of people, including, big guy in the international community, such as the UN Secretary General, talking about the levy as one of the solutions to increase the global resources to tackle, in particular, climate change. So I do think we have never been so close to that. What we need to go a step further and at last manage to get this money flowing to the fight against climate change, but maybe also to other global solidarity clause. First, I think we need more political impetus. That's why the Prime Minister Motley, President Rato, and President Macron wrote this op-ed at the beginning of this week, explaining where we are and how we can make progress on this solidarity levy, and call for action and for participation from other countries. That's the only way to move forward. Political impetus, some more countries joining the coalition. But that's not enough. And probably in order to get that, we have also to get some more clarity on what could be done at national level, and without first reducing the fiscal sovereignty. I think there is a lot of reluctancy from fiscal authorities to get into that, because they think they are going to lose their sovereignty. And you know that fiscal sovereignty is a key element of a nation. Second, it has to be done without hurting the low and middle class people. We have to be careful not to damage the social issues with trying to solve, the climate or other global cause. So that's an important aspect of that. And third, we have to find a solution which is not damaging national competitiveness. Because if we do that, obviously we will find resistance from many parts of the national sphere, specifically companies, but also people, because they know that if we lose competitiveness, well, we're going to lose jobs. And that's not what we want to do. So these are the three conditions to me in order to decide on a solidarity levy at national level. And obviously, if we can't get clarity that there are possibilities to do that in complying with these three conditions, well, it's no mystery that there is no enough political impetus. So, but the fact is, and Benito Müller demonstrated that in his presentation, there are solutions. There are solutions that are already implemented in several countries. So we just heard Dan introducing the Fijian case. That's a good example. But as Benito said, in France, we have had over the last 20 years this solidarity levy on airline tickets. What is less known is that in France also we have another solidarity levy on financial transaction, and this tax is providing something like 2 billion a year, and 25% is dedicated to global solidarity. So there are solutions, and there are different solutions. We are not talking of one possibility. There are several possibilities depending on every country, every mechanism, fiscal mechanism that are available in the different countries. So it's not that there are no solutions. And by the way, the airline ticket solidarity levy, it's not only in France, it's also in 20 more countries, actually. So it's not at all a specific characteristic of one country. So now, how to use this money? We have not this money, so I will be brief on that. But the question asked was also whether or not that could be used for loss and damage. I don't know if you want me to elaborate a bit on that at all.
We can take that in a second round.
Second round, okay.
Yeah.
So let me close that, just telling everybody that I think this is the time to act. That's the sense of the op-ed from the three head of states. Time to act, because we are now in the middle of the negotiation of SAQG, and it would be really timely to decide that this is something that should be part of the new objective. But at the same time, it's difficult to decide here that it will be for this challenge or this other challenge. So we will come back on that later. So I stop here.
Thank you, Jean-Christophe. And I would like to follow up with you, Yusuf Hussain, because Kenya was also one of the countries taking this initiative with the task force. And I would be happy if you can tell us more about your thinking. And as also with I said to Jean-Christophe, please also comment on the ideas we have to also engage with national and subnational levels. Thank you.
Thank you. I am glad to speak on behalf of the task force, as my brother was saying here, and to explore more into the work that we had started by a year ago, which has since grown to some extent. And this week on Tuesday, we had launched a coalition of like-minded countries with 5 new members joining, totaling now to 17 countries and 3 observer organizations, with a lot of growing traction, considering the good case put forward by VG that there are practical solutions to resource mobilize domestically and solve issues, even though the global south is in a very difficult situation right now to mobilize resources domestically, but that was a very good practical practical example that Fiji had shown. I'm actually happy to see members of the task force seated with me here, including Fiji, who had recently joined among the 5 countries that joined. And I also thank Professor Benito, who will be part of the expert groups that will be helping the task force also decide as we go forward. And the option Professor was explaining is actually one of the different options the task force may consider in future, because we are moving into a phase where we are going to develop concrete proposals in the first quarter of 2025. That's why my colleague was shying away from saying where the money will be allocated to, because we have not yet reached there. That is a decision that we will leave to the parties in the task force to decide. Well, from where I sit and on a personal opinion, I think what Professor Mula is proposing could be one of the options on how we are going to reallocate resources that could be generated out of this. As we move into 2025, as I said, we are trying to see if the task force and the coalition we just launched could propose concrete proposals in the different levy categories in the menu that we have, with some impact assessment, so that we don't just have proposals, but also have impacts to balance what he was saying, the social good, between the social good and resourcing more and looking for more additional resources. And of course, we will base our discussion on which levy option maybe is most likely to receive the support of the greatest number of countries, and also bringing into light the potential impact of such measures, and assessing the best way to ensure equity in design and reallocation of the resources. So this is some of the things that maybe we will need to broaden the base, call for more countries to join, so that we can make the best decision, the best possible decision that can help combat the effect of climate change. And the task force, with the momentum that is created now, may also bring discussion at the highest possible level, possibly at the heads of state, like what we had on Tuesday, that several leaders joined the event to just garner political momentum behind the initiative, so that it succeeds. That's the intention we're having. We're also trying to see if in the current discussion, in the COP setup, we can hook 1 or 2 texts, so that we can, as we envision this process to culminate in Brazil, in Belém, as Benito was saying, it may give us an avenue to further discuss if we manage to hook that. And the task force membership right now are discussing. It's not advanced, but that's something that is in discussion on how best we can engineer this. So basically, it is a very good initiative that we feel like will provide more predictable additional sources of funding for the issues we are looking at right now, and considering we are talking about a quantum leap from different perspective, from an African perspective of 1.3 trillion, and we are in agreement that we really need the quantity of financing, and from all quarters of the world. I think we are in agreement that quantity is needed. So where are we getting these extra resources? That is the intention of forming this task force, and it comes in at a critical time when the geopolitics is not is actually going into a different directions with the U.S. elections, the first messaging coming out of the U.S. and all those things. So that's what I will have said. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. And thank you also for the leadership in the task force from Kenya. And Jens Fuhl from Denmark. Denmark was one of the countries who recently joined, and that is, of course, very welcome as well. And I would like to know more about your thinking and what Denmark think about these possibilities to mobilize funding. Please.
Thank you very much, Matthias, and thanks a lot for organizing this event. Yeah, first of all, I'm glad to be here and sort of sitting between the two of the founding members of the task force, and I think we're sort of proud to be one of the newcomers. I think we are probably less clear about exactly sort of how we want to implement this in practice. We have less experience, but I think we see the task force really as a way where we, in a coalition with some like-minded countries that really want to explore this and see this as something that can really move forward, try to develop ideas together and try to explore some of these ideas as we move forward. I think basically we see that this whole idea about sort of international taxes that cuts across countries is a very interesting instrument to generate financing, in particular if it's possible to at the same time address global climate challenges that it can be difficult for individual nations to solve, and then at the same time provide some revenue for climate finance, including contributing to this new goal we are setting up at this meeting, but also contributing to specific issues such as responding to loss and damage and some of the things that Dan was talking about in his intervention. I think from a Danish perspective, we have sort of over recent years done a lot to put in place different instruments, taxation instruments across different sectors, so that I think by the end of this decade, it's the expectation that at the national level, almost all sort of emitting sectors will be covered by CO2 taxes. So the natural next step from a Danish perspective is really to sort of look at how we can also look at the emissions that occur in connection with international activities that are not really or only sort of very partially covered by the existing sort of national climate regulation. And that, for example, include international air traffic and shipping, sort of the maritime sector. These are sort of two of the areas where we really see sort of a big potential for, at the same time, create sort of a strong incentive for green transformation of the sectors, and also create a revenue stream that can be used for climate action, including, for example, for responding to loss and damage, but also for other climate related issues and issues related to transforming the sectors themselves. So, and I think that the reason why we find this particularly interesting to talk about this sort of internationally is that it's virtually sort of impossible for individual nation states to really regulate these areas alone. That sort of an international and joint effort is needed, and that underlines sort of also the importance of this type of collaboration and maybe starting small with some with the willing, but sort of hopefully quickly to evolve into something that covers the entire planet. I don't know, do you want me to say something about also sort of the loss and damage part now, or do you want to take that as a second?
Yeah, we'll take a second round with that, but I would also just like to open up for possibility for some questions, if there are any questions or comments, reflections to these first interventions. I think we have a microphone. So please, if there are any comments. Yeah, please, over there.
Thank you, and thanks very much for the presentations. My name is Ben Wilson, and I work for SCIAF, Caritas Scotland. I've got a question, perhaps best answered from the Danish perspective, about additionality. I mean, I imagine that any levies you would want to make sure that they were additional to existing ODA flows, if it was going towards the loss and damage fund. But my question really is, is how do you safeguard that additionality long into the future? What can you put into place to make sure that governments in future do not decide to change the allocation to start to count it in a different way from one democratic cycle to the next? Thank you.
Thank you. There's another question over there. Yeah, Kriti.
Thank you very much for the fizzy example and the example from the panelists. So my question would be, first of all, how does the FRLD, the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, how does the FRLD see the Climate Solidarity Levy as a vehicle of distribution for the Loss and Damage Fund? Has there been any kind of discussion on it, or any kind of updates on that possible coordination? And secondly, in case of Nepal, where I come from, in case of Nepal, we have got a certain levy on petroleum products. So, for example, if any consumer buys petroleum, they have to pay a certain paisa for the pollution levy, but we have been unable to utilize the collected amount, which is there in the government account, but we have been unable to mobilize it. So maybe that would also be one of the areas where we can learn from the Fiji example and from the other countries' example, and how we can develop the frameworks to mobilize that levy. And maybe that could be potential for a climate solidarity levy or the fund in case of Nepal as well. So I see that potentiality. So maybe few examples on how the whole policy framework was developed to mobilize that levy would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And I know we have a question from one of our virtual participants, Benito Miller. I don't know if we can get him online. Or at least so that he can speak.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Is that possible?
Very good.
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Now we hear you.
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to all the panelists. I just wanted to give a quick sort of comment in reply to particularly what Jean-Christophe said. When I was thinking about the way forward, the very sort of, I admit it's pedestrian. It's not grand things, but I had two constraints in mind, which I hope the proposal which we're making addresses. The first one is precisely the fiscal sovereignty of nation states. It's going to be very difficult to overcome that in the context of a global levy or something. It may be possible, but it is difficult. And the second one is sectoral agreements, IMO. They may well be possible, but the danger is that the money which is being collected will have to stay in the sector, to greening the sector and things, and not go to loss and damage. So what we are proposing here is something which we can do right now, like France started it in 2006, and just did it with partner countries, just not waiting for a large agreement or anything, but just doing it now. And I think that would send a signal in Belém, which is quite important, that there are willing countries out there to do something about loss and damage in solidarity for those the poorest and the most vulnerable countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Benito. We have some questions for the panel here. Who wants to start? Jens, do you want to start? You ended last time, so now we take it backwards.
Okay, yeah, thank you for the questions. So yeah, I can start. I mean, first of all, the question about additionality. I think sort of the way I think about these sort of new and innovative ways of generating finance is that we are talking about new streams of finance that are sort of different from the ones that we have now. So in that sense, I would see them sort of as additional. I think also I'm not sure they would. I think part of them, some could be collected by Denmark, but I also see that exactly because some of these sort of types of levies could more be related to things that maybe I don't know how they will be collected in practice and how they will be implemented in practice. I think there's this issue of fiscal sovereignty that is probably very, very relevant in this. So I think often it will be in many different countries, so that this will happen. And therefore, sort of at the end of the day, it will of course be up to those individual countries to sort of agree to or sort of to endorse or subscribe to whatever has been agreed. Also, sort of at a higher level, that this is the way we are going to do it, and this is how we are going to use the resources that we sort of generate in a sense from this levy. Then on the loss and damage fund, I think this was actually the part that I wanted to say when that I didn't say something about. But I think I think together with Dan and Jean-Christophe, I'm also a member of the board of the fund responding to loss and damage, and I think, to me, at least from the onset, an important feature of this new fund should be, and hopefully it still will be, that it will be able to sort of receive resources from new and innovative sources, and I hope that when we now are moving into sort of developing a resource mobilization and fundraising strategy for the fund, that this will be part of it, and that the fund will have a proactive approach to actually reaching out to some of these things in the outside world and trying to make some sort of agreements with some of those international schemes that may be developed in the coming years, and sort of through those ensure, sort of, you could call it sort of a more steady resource input into the fund. Whether it will happen, I think it remains to be seen. But I think at least it's something that I think we should really work for trying to make happen. And then I think the second part is well, I almost thought you responded to the question yourself about Nepal. I think also I would see the fund as sort of one of the things it should be able to support is countries to build something like what Dan, in a sense, showed us from Fiji, and sort of, yeah, that the fund should be able sort of to support other countries in building that type of national sort of instruments and frameworks, both for collecting resources and distributing resources, but also sort of the fund may be able to help sort of those national sort of systems accessing also resources from sort of a broader international fund stream. So definitely I would hope that it would be possible to connect these things in that way. I think we need to have that as a perspective in the work we're doing. Thanks.
Thank you, Jens. And Joseph, would you like to continue as well?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add some perspective on specific activities or where this, how do we envision this tax to be collected? On what he was saying. I mean, subscribing to the idea doesn't mean you're going to implement the same at the national level. What it means is what we are trying to do is actually taxing the high emitting sector's profit. The huge profit last year, if you look at the books from different statistics, the huge profit last year that goes untaxed. So how do we tax these sectors and use the money? Because we are talking about quantum leap. So where are we getting the additional sources of funding we are looking at? That is what gives birth to this. And the idea is taxing the high emitting sectors. The source or where the tax will be maybe is something that can be debated and determined, but taxing them and using the money for climate action. That is what that's how we are envisioning. It doesn't basically mean if you subscribe to the idea, you need to implement this at your home. Where I come from in Kenya, right now, domestic resource mobilization is not something we can discuss in an open market because it had a lot of issues in few months, and you see the scenarios are different, but you will still have to meet your national budgets and do something, but it's not something we are telling countries to implement it at national level. And on I think we have practical examples of how we envision this should work. What France is doing with FTTs, and it's not only France, about 21 other countries have done on fossil fuel, about some 30 countries have already done. And the very good example Fiji had given on fundraising for specific problem or specific climate action crisis that are within their boundaries. So there are a variety of examples we can build on, and also President Lula and the solidarity levies for the universal health in 2006. That was 2006, some 20 plus years ago. So they're very good examples that we can build on, a good case, but it doesn't mean you subscribe to the idea you have to implement it at the national level. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jean-Christophe.
Yeah, some brief comments first on the question of additionality, which is to me very much related to the scheme proposed by Benito and the point he made in his comments right now. I have mixed feelings about it, to be frank, because of precisely this issue of fiscal sovereignty. If we decide to put this money directly from the pocket of the civilian of one country to the fund, it means that there is no latitude for the fiscal authority to direct this money to other causes. It will go, whatever is the situation, economic situation in this country, whatever is the number of other challenges, global challenges that we have to face, it will go to this fund, and this fund will be dedicated in the scheme proposed by Benito to loss and damage. So this is not the way it works in France right now. Actually, as you know, the national authorities have the possibility to give more money to the global solidarity, and less or less depending on the situation. And for instance, part of the airline tickets go to the GCF and other global solidarity causes. But depending on the revenues we can decide to do less or more, and sometimes, notably during the COVID time, for instance, the revenue were very weak actually, and what we have to give to the GCF was weak. So we use other revenue to do it, but that was not coming from the French scheme on airline tickets. So I have mixed feelings, but at the same time, I do recognize that that will be a great step forward for global solidarity to dedicate some tax revenue to a specific cause. That will be great. Maybe too big a step. That's my point. Maybe we have to go through first an initial phase where the national fiscal authorities will have the right to decide what part, what proportion of this levy will go to this fund, and what part will go to for other purposes. In France, it goes, for instance, to the airline to adjust to the climate change. So airline administration and airline actors. That's what some are calling for the international maritime tax. But yeah, I mean, so we have to reflect on that. It has to be seen whether we can go directly to this affectation to the allocation to this fund of this tax, or whether we have to leave the national authority to decide the proportion. Then on loss and damage, as Jens started to talk about it, I mean, the question is more to me whether this fund could work without a solidarity levy flowing into the trust fund. I have my doubts. I think that at one point we would need that, and the sooner is probably the better. At this point, as Jens said, the fund has not made any call for that. We will be starting our discussion on the long-term resource mobilization at the beginning of next year, but we have to finalize it by the end of 2025. That's a decision already taken by the board. So at the end of 2025, the board would have to make the call or another call in order to develop its long-term resource mobilization strategy, including or not including a call for a solidarity levy flowing into its trust account. But my sense is at one point we would need that.
Thank you, and also really good to learn more about the challenges. And we are very, very happy to have Lilium Chagas here as well. Thank you for coming. I know you have had a busy schedule, and you're very welcome to join us here. While you come up, I think Stephen Hammer also has a question. If we can get a microphone. And I should introduce Lilium as well. You are a negotiator also from Brazil, so we are really, really happy to have you here as well. But Stephen, please.
Thank you. I wanted to follow up on the subnational piece that Benito raised. There was some research done. He pointed to the study that was carried out looking at the possibility of imposing this, again, at a local level. So in the New York metropolitan area, there are 3 airports. 100 million air travelers per year or more pass through those airports. Just call it $5 per ticket. $500 million could be raised out of one major American city. It's complex politically because it is not the city of New York that runs the airports. It's a regional authority. It actually splits between 2 different states. So none of this is done easily, but one of the things that emerged from that research was the fact that only the federal government, the United States government, has the ability to actually impose a tax on tickets. The authorities can impose taxes on other things associated with airport operations that would be an indirect way of getting at the total number of air travelers. Question back to my friends representing national governments is there some way of, if it's difficult to do this at a national level for political reasons or for the reasons that you have cited, to at least allow those subnationals, whether it's states, regional authorities, what have you, to have the ability to self-impose this? And how might that affect some of the sovereignty concerns you have? In the New York metropolitan region, you have an extraordinarily large population of people who have emigrated from island states, less developed countries in different parts of the world. And so the notion of solidarity might actually fit very well with many of them traveling back and forth. And so how can sovereign governments set it up so that, again, if there is a willing authority or governmental body, that they would be allowed to do that?
Thank you. Very good question, which I would be very happy to hear answers to. And I think we will start with you, Lilian, because you should have a chance to speak. And in addition to this question, you're also very welcome to give a more general view on the potential of solidarity levies from your perspective. Please.
Thank you, and I would like to apologize for being late. I was in a HODS meeting for carbon markets, which is another tool that we hope to make it functional as soon as possible to be used by countries as a mitigation tool to be applied. So I'm really sorry. I'd like to comment basically three things. That is, it's very important that stakeholders are searching for alternatives of funding. It seems that the reality of climate change is striking faster than we wanted, and then from what we were expecting. So all avenues should be explored, all paths should be on the table. We are engaging in several different discussions to enlarge the financial source for climate action. We made this a priority of the Brazilian presidency of G20, which is about to conclude next week. The summit is going to be in Rio, 18 and 19 of November. And in the sphere of G20 countries, which is an informal group of the biggest economies in the world, Brazil brought the discussion also the proposal of a tax on the super rich. So this was also discussed among those countries, and I'm not sure it's going to make to the leaders' declaration, but it's important that our ideas and our different proposals are brought up and discussed and analyzed and assessed. Also regarding levies as a source for finance, we recently joined the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force that France and other countries are organizing in order to analyze all possible levies, its impacts and its operationalization. This was launched in COP28, and we want to be part of the discussion. So we recently joined this task force and are engaging with them. And thirdly, I think that finance is a main output, expected outcome of this COP of Baku, but also we will have to keep trying to find new sources. So it is possibly one of the main subjects that we are going to propose for COP30 as well. Now, hopefully, we'll get the new goal agreed here, and then we will have space, political space to explore the other parts of climate finance that has to do with making financial flows aligned with a future of low carbon. So that's our objective, to get the job done here and keep discussing things that we also brought to the G20 and have to do with more systemic functioning of the financial international architecture, some changes on regulations that should happen in order to make capital more available and more importantly at lower cost to developing countries, because at this point they are getting debt, they are getting in more debt in order to be able to access international money. And so these kind of discussions, we think the system here, the multilateral regime should embrace in order to make it possible that financial flows will flow to the same goal of climate. Now, things like debt relief or risk assessment and liquidity, this kind of stuff that have to do with the financial architecture must be addressed. The sooner the better. And so everything should be on the table in order to find the kind of resources that are needed to face adaptation, resiliency, infrastructure, loss and damage. We cannot leave no alternative behind. We have no space for that. So we will provide, you keep providing the space of COPs to discuss this important and urgent problem of enlarging finance to developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and really, really great to hear your perspective as well. I just want to check if Diane Blacklane is online and want to speak. No, I don't think so. In that case, I just turn to you again, Jean-Christophe, Jens, and Joseph. You should also have a chance to answer the question from Stephen Hammer about subnational, maybe even non-state initiatives. How can this contribute, and is there anything needed from governments to enable this? Jean-Christophe, you can start.
That's a good question. And it really depends on the fiscal regulation on every country. I'm not able to answer correctly, probably, on France, even though I do think that the what we call the port authority or the airport authorities have some latitude, and they are linked most of the time with the local authorities themselves, or even the assets is the ownership of the local authorities. So they may have some latitude to raise some levies, but I wouldn't be sure, of course. But I can check and come back to you, Mike. On just last word to support what Liliane just said. I think we have no possibility to give up of any possibility. So we have to put everything on the table, as you say, and look at them. And this is why this task force is so important. And I want to underline what Yusuf said. This task force is going to deliver analysis and information on these different solutions which are on the table, and it's quite important that everyone look at that and disseminate that over all the stakeholders on this, which means everyone actually, because everyone is concerned by that.
Thank you. And Jens? I'm from Denmark, so I'm very interested in this sensor.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I also think it was a good question. I also think that it was a good answer from Jean-Christophe, that it depends a lot on the country. I mean, just the entire population of Denmark is probably less than metropolitan New York. Our airport is smaller, so yeah. So I think it's a good question. I don't really have any answer. I think it's more the tax authorities of Denmark that could respond to it. I can't, but yeah, it's a good question. I would also like just to agree with Jean-Christophe and my two co-speakers also on the importance on this. I think this is I think I like the way to put it, that this is something we have to do. I don't see many other ways that we can sort of find new possible streams of resources that can help us in all the areas we want without also testing this opportunity. So I definitely think it's something that we should do, and that it's good that we have this task force that makes it start working at it together.
Thank you. Joseph?
Thank you. From a local perspective, there's nothing in Kenya on multinationals right now, but in the proposed retracted bill for 2024, there were proposals, unfortunately, that did not see the light of the day. But the other examples we can look at, the OECD 2 bill has a very good proposals on multinationals that we can look at. I don't have the information, but that's something that's available, and I'm sure they must be concluding, or they have concluded. On the importance of the task force, and I want to reiterate what they had said. We are saying we want to source for more predictable additional sources of financing, climate finance, considering also the effect it will have on the carbon footprint, the achievement of the 5 years goal, the 1.5. I'm not a scientist, but I had we might be approaching to the 3.0 temperatures, and the target is 1.5. So if we can do anything that will help us move closer to the goal, I mean, it should be good. So the vision we had for the task force is really gathering base, and there's a very good traction. I invite you all on behalf of the co-chairs and the member countries to join the task force. My brother here from Samoa, I had a discussion with him also. We really wish to have you join us also. And what she was saying, I mean, the importance of having more sources of funding, and a very good example is the proposals on taxing the wealthier, that Brazil and the G20 had done that. Also, the task force in the report that was released yesterday on the finance, they also made a lot of reference to that specific proposal, amongst others, that we had not captured in our mandate. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lilian, you should also have a chance to comment more specifically on the possibility for subnational levies and how that could, and if that could contribute.
Thank you. Well, I'm sorry I missed the beginning of the discussion, but I'd like to mention another thing. Some leaders here at the high level segment, they mentioned the alternative of levies as climate finance. So I think that the levies are already under the radar, and they should be assessed and designed and proposed, and hopefully we'll have this as an alternative. also, there are discussions about the levies on the air, on aviation sector and shipping sector. I'd like to comment that it's important that we have a real scientific assessment to the impacts, because regarding some types of maritime levies that were brought up, we commissioned a study by the University of São Paulo in Brazil, and the result is that such a levy, it's a specific kind of levy on maritime transportation, would be a burden to large exporters of commodities. And these medium economies, emerging economies like Brazil, India, they would be paying more to transport the goods that they export. So if this holds true, would be impact the ability of such countries to face their own domestic challenges in terms of financing their own mitigation and adaptation efforts, and wouldn't be fair. So it's important that we understand what the levies will be, what impact they will have for the ones who have to pay them. So under the subnational levies, I would have to look further, but it depends, the structure of the fiscal system of each place. In Brazil, would be very difficult. Would probably be under federal jurisdiction. But the laws, we have always the possibility to change them according to the needs of societies. So, but I would have to look further, because the tax system is a federal thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you to the panel. We'll give them a hand. And now I would like to invite Honorable Minister Tue Ole Sulu Sulu Cedric Schuster from Samoa to give a concluding remark. And I know he also has some news, so I think we should listen with big interest here.
Thank you, everyone. Sorry to keep you longer than you need to be here, but thank you to the panel. And thank you, Mateus, for accommodating my last-minute request. I was only going to come in and listen to the panel, but he said I can say something. So great to hear about the initiative in Fiji and the solidarity thing, but I was going to talk about what we are doing in Samoa. And it came out of my frustrations at the international negotiations of we're losing our land, the impacts of climate change affecting us more, taking us 5 to 10 years to develop a proposal that usually doesn't get funded, or so we're getting a lot more impacts from climate change, but the funds and the resources aren't around. And I come to Sharm el-Sheikh, my first COP since COP3. There's 50,000 people that come to it. Last year, 70,000 people came to Dubai. And I asked myself, are we walking the talk? Are we going more? Are we having really climate impact, or are we causing more carbon footprint by all these people? So I started an initiative with our ministry that everyone that travels each travel, you come back and you calculate your carbon footprint, and you plant trees or put money into it. And this is came up. So we've developed our carbon footprint initiative. We're developing an app, and we just had government cabinet approved it 2-3 weeks ago, that from now on, every government official, every cabinet member that travels, they come back and we had to calculate our carbon footprint, and we pay money to this new fund. It's not a trust fund. It will go into Treasury. We're also looking at how we minimize all the setting up of a trust fund and the costs that are going to go into that. We already have a government mechanism that our finance can collect all the money, hold it there, distribute it using the government officials to review and the communities. So this initiative, using our carbon footprint, we've spoken with the other international agencies that are based in Samoa, UNDP, FAO. We've spoken with, we're using to start off with all the organizations that are in Samoa that will contribute to this. And the app, our part of speaking to you today is that hopefully we're appealing to the people rather than to the government. Because just like I hear this discussion that goes on, there's going to be many years trying to negotiate how the best format. Whereas if we deal directly with people, it's voluntary. If you want to do it, great. If not, that's your prerogative, and we will continue trying to do the activities that we want to do. But the app is to hopefully get more funds to help us do the work, build the seawalls, relocate the people, do the energy transition, plant the mangroves to as part of nature-based solutions, rather than talking about it or spending more time writing the proposals. But this app is where we are hoping to get folks that really want to walk. When we say walk the talk, are you ready to put your money to really do something? Or are we going to talk again for another 10 years and blame it on government, blame it on the private sector? But we as individuals really need to step up and show how we really can help out. If you want more, we will be happy to send out information on this, but I'm not expecting anyone here to contribute to it. Our goal is people in Samoa. We have a diaspora that lives overseas. So for all those that are playing rugby and playing football in America, and those that live in anytime they travel within Australia or within the US or within, we're going to ask them to use their carbon footprint to help fund the work that we have. And then anyone else on top of that will be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. And now we have a concluding remark from my colleague, from Jimena Levia-Rusek from IPI, who is with us from New York. So I think we can get Jimena online.
Yes, can you hear me? Thank you, Matthias. And thank you so much for leading this incredible panel and lineup. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we see you.
Yeah,
and hear you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much, Matthias, for leading us into this great event and a great night in Baku, the end of first week. Thank you for your commitment, for being here on your Friday night. That shows how passionate you are and how committed you are to the topic. So as Matthias and Benito and I have been working on and combining the task force with the Alliance, we believe the combination is really needed, as the task force is looking at a wider range of levies, whereas the Alliance is really focused on getting one off the ground, which is the aviation one, and specifically to have some of that funding to scale the fund on loss and damage. So we believe that this combination of approaches between the task force and the alliance can really help us get things going and build momentum at different levels. And so just to conclude, I think that it's important to recognize what Lilian said about that some of the vulnerabilities of countries. So I think that we've been working really a lot on having differentiated approaches and how this aviation levy will not impact the most vulnerable or the most affected, but instead those that have the capacity to pay more, right? So the paper that IPI and Oxford have on subnational states in the US could not be more relevant given the elections. And we do encourage anyone that wants to read it. It's available, and Jonah can provide the details there. Jonah, if you can raise your hand. And so, yeah, I think that we really hope that by COP30, we have a group committed to an alliance on an aviation levy, sort of like the French and others did with UNITAR. I think this can really show the world that we're serious on funding loss and damage. And with that, we really want to thank you for being there.
Thank you, Jimena. And I want to thank all of you as well who are here in the room, in the panel, and of course, all of you who have been following online. A few three short practical things before you leave. One is that the PowerPoint and the other documents which have been referred to, they are all online, and we are, of course, very happy to share them. If you want to stay in touch and to know more about our work, you can talk to Juna Harris, who will be standing in the back, and just give him your contact information, and we will, of course, share the information from this. I should also mention that, of course, we are really happy when countries move forward. And I also hope that there will be possibility for some kind of readiness program and ensuring support to countries, developing countries who want to develop these levy initiatives. It's not easy to develop new taxes and levies. So that's also something developed countries could help with. With those words, I would just like to say thank you and have a good evening.